Right now, we go to the Mark Spain Real Estate Hotline and check in with Mike Ginnitti of Spotrac, talking Titans and talking specifically Titans contract flexibility going into this offseason. Good morning, Mike. How are you?
Good morning. Doing well. Appreciate you guys having me back.
Absolutely. And Mike, we'll start at the quarterback position because this is the question that a lot of Titans fans have right now. How much flexibility do the Titans have with Ryan Tannehill's contract to potentially save money against the cap for next year?
Yeah, it's all in their hands. I mean, they've got $27 million of non-guaranteed cash sitting out there that they can get rid of if they want to. I'm just not sure that the football decision is there to make that move right now. But contractually, this was always the line of demarcation where they could get out of this thing. It's just, I'm not sure things have worked out as they wanted it to be.
Well, Mike, the question I have for you about Ryan and specifically maybe lessening the cap hit next year, but keeping Ryan as a part of this team, how much flexibility, how practical is it for the Titans to add on a year to his deal and restructure things to make that cap hit go down significantly from $36 million in 2023?
Yeah, to me, that's where this thing is headed. I'm not even sure they need to add a real year. The only reason you do that would be so that you can cut him later next in 2024, which is pretty good business from a cap perspective. But look, you could just restructure that $27 million as you need, all the way down to $1 million if you need to, and free up a significant amount with void years and really push this thing out. That's probably where we're headed here. I don't think they're in a position where they can ask him to take a pay cut like we've seen other teams do in situations like this. He knows his leverage right now. He knows there's not a better option on this team or really in this offseason. So I do think just a cap restructure is where we're headed here, and then we'll move on in March of 2024.
Mike, we've kind of seen how everything's kind of unfolded with the Titans letting go of their GM midway through the season post the Philadelphia Eagles game. A.J. Brown plays for that team currently. You look back at it now, do you say to yourself there should have been ways to kind of make that contract that he requested work for this team considering not making the playoffs and everything else surrounding it now?
Yes and no. I give them credit for doing what they did. I really do. It's not like they didn't have a plan B right there in mind. They drafted a player to replace him. It didn't work out with injuries. Look, injuries is a story of this 2022 season for Tennessee. It happened early on the defensive side of the ball. It happened in the middle of the year on the offensive side of the ball. So there is some forgiving to have here, and I like the boldness of it. Everybody else was signing big money wide receivers, looking for high draft pick wide receivers, and thinking they had to go big. I think that's not going to be a sustainable idea in this league. You can't have one, you have to have four. So I like the idea of going back into the draft. It's not like they weren't signing other players on this roster. They just decided not to sign that one, and it backfired fantastically, and there are prices to pay for that. But I don't think it was the absolute wrong decision at the time. It just didn't work out.
And another aspect, too, going into this offseason is this Titans team has to find ways to fill gaps as far as it goes. The offensive line, potentially 4 new guys there. You got other free agents that's probably going to be cut. How do you craft a team going into the offseason like this with the team that has as many holes as it does, specifically offensively, when I think you need a wide receiver 2, 4 OL, figure out what you're going to do with Derrick? What's the recipe for this team?
You're not going to like my answer. It's moving on from major pieces. It's kind of blowing this thing up around you in those non-dominant positions. And look, it might come down to not signing Simmons. It might come down to trading Simmons. It might come down to moving on from Henry, even though I don't recommend that right now. But what you're saying is absolutely correct. There's not 2 or 3 things to fix here. There's 8 or 9. And when that's the case, you need draft assets. You need cap space and free agency. And you need a 2 to 3 year plan over a couple of off seasons to fill those kind of holes. It just doesn't happen in 1 year, unfortunately. And with the quarterback situation winding down, you're really putting yourself in a situation where you don't want to put all your chips in right now because you know that there's something waiting to explode in 2024. So I do think that there's some tough decisions to be made for whoever this new GM is going to be stepping into here. And it may not be keep the gas pedal down. It may be kind of coast a little bit here and then really rip it off in 2024.
Wow, Mike. So you say is potentially better to trade Jeff, but in this world of NFL football where running backs are expendable, you much rather keep Derrick Henry. What's the give and take on those two?
Henry deserves it. And I know I'm not supposed to talk with emotion here. I'm the money guy, but Henry deserves to stick around and finish out this contract. I'd restructure that cap hit. I probably wouldn't add another year or two, but I would have said so a year from now. But you keep him on the roster as sort of a franchise player right now. Give Ryan Tannehill at least something that he knows behind him, and you really start to blow this thing up elsewhere. Robert Woods I'd consider as a bubble player right now. Some of those defensive backs, bubble players right now. So anything with a cap hit north of $15 million, I'm thinking about release instead of restructure right now, or trade instead of restructure right now. I'm thinking short term, long term here, and that's sort of how you operate when you're stuck in these windows.
So yesterday during Mike Vrabel's press conference to end the regular season, he brought up a word that we haven't heard him say much, at least as a head coach, and that's the word speed, and how we need to focus on being a faster team. What do you take from something like that?
Younger.
Yep.
We got to get younger. We got to get younger and cheaper, and I do agree with that. That's where the game is going. So I think that sort of aligns with what I'm saying here is, there's a lot of good players that have done a lot of great things, and they have a lot of experience. Those should be tradable entities on this roster, and those trades turn into draft picks, and those draft picks turn into young, cheaper, speedier players. So I agree with everything he's saying. I don't think this has to be, a 5-year rebuild, but I'd put them in, a 2 to 3 year window here where it's all about getting back to the draft.
So a lot of fans like to just put this out here because they always like to talk about the quarterback position, right? And you know that Malik Willis is still learning. He's still developing. We don't know what his future is here. However, when you look at Ryan Tannehill, he's done a good job. He's not been great, but he's been good. He's held things together. Could be back next season. But if you were going to go out there on the market this year, would there be somebody who would be better to insert here in Tennessee?
The one player I have targeted for this roster that I think could at least give them a chance to have a higher ceiling, because I agree with you. I think Ryan Tannehill has been underserved on a national landscape. His comeback from what he was in Miami to what he was able to be in Tennessee was remarkable in a lot of cases. Jordan Love, to me, is the one player I'd be targeting if I'm going to look and try to acquire a quarterback, because there is a ceiling there that has not been untapped. You can get a year and a half out. You can play the Sam Darnold game that Carolina just played, which is we've got a year and a half in terms of guaranteed money. What can we look at internally and try to get out of that player and maybe have a 4 to 5 year future with without having to give up too much? Now, I don't know where things are heading in Green Bay, but to answer your question, there just isn't an option right now sitting out there that, to me, is markedly better than what Ryan Tannehill can give you next year. It's just not sitting there.
Mike Ginnitti, Spotrac, with us this morning on Ramon, Kayla, and Will. Mike, on the flip side, another quarterback that might be available, the guy in Chicago with the Bears having that top pick. What kind of market do you see possibly for Justin Fields? And perhaps Chicago isn't even interested in this as we enter the smokescreen and kind of season of lies part of the offseason conversation. But what kind of market, what do you see in that situation?
Yeah, that'd be huge. I mean, that's one of the bigger trade situations we'd have in this league, and we don't see that too often here. I mean, we're talking 2 to 3 first-round picks, in my opinion, just to get yourself into that conversation.
Wow.
I don't think Chicago's in that frame of mind right now. They might be a year from now, but obviously they hold all the cards with that number 1 pick. Look, another name to put in that conversation, which is a little bit different story, but similar player. The Lamar Jackson trade stuff's not going to go away. There is clearly a rift between the organization and the player right now. That's not going away. So there are a few names quarterback wise that are sitting on rosters that are good enough to start for any other team in this league and may become available over the next couple of weeks.
Mike, you can't talk about rifts between quarterbacks and organizations without talking about Aaron Rodgers. How bad of a situation has he put Green Bay in again going into this offseason?
I don't think this one's going to be as bad as last year. I hope not, because that was a nightmare for all of us, including us trying to figure out the numbers.
Sure,
it's a little bit easier this year. If he says yes, it's $60 million guaranteed. If he says no, it's $40 million dead cap to retire or be traded away. So it's a lot either way. It's too much for what we saw on the field this year, but I have a feeling that both parties just want to run this back for one more season and see what they can do for a final run.
As far as, like I say, I like to talk to OL or in the trenches in general. This team needs a left tackle. They have, Nicholas Petit-Frere as a young rookie right tackle, can move over to the left. But what is a market for a guy like Orlando Brown Jr. or any other left tackle free agent that may hit the market actually?
Yeah, the Orlando Brown one's tough because his value dipped a little bit, right? His shine wore off just a little bit, even though that offensive line had a really good year in Kansas City, and it's part of the reason they are the number 1 seed. Like he's still going to be looking for Trent Williams money, the $25 million. That's where we're going here. I mean, right tackles are at $20 million, left tackles are at $25 million, guards are at $20 million, centers are at $14 million. It's a good time to be in those trenches and know what you're doing. So nothing's going to be inexpensive. We saw what Terran Armstead got last year in Miami. Anytime you get a viable left or right tackle on this open market, you're going to be looking at top of the market price no matter the age right now. It's just the way of the world.
Also this too, as far as, this Titans team going into this new phase of GM, OC, DB coach, and just other aspects of it. How fragile or how much of a difference is it between what the San Francisco 49ers have done because they have a few superstars with high contracts versus what the Los Angeles Rams did, who had the Super Bowl and now are out and considering their coach talking about retiring? How fragile is that process?
It's year to year, and we really have to start looking at it that way in all of these sports that we cover. It's not just the NFL, but this thing is truly year to year, as you saw with obviously the Rams, and we've seen with baseball the last couple of years as well. You go all in with the knowledge of we're going to have to probably break this thing down in between 2 to 3 years. So you got to pick your spots. Just a quick point on what you said there, those two comparisons. The Rams had a viable coaching staff and system in place. And to me, that's the only reason that worked. Obviously, Matthew Stafford was a big part of it, but he was dropping into a system that knew exactly what had to happen, which is the exact opposite of what the Broncos did, right? And I'd put the Titans a little bit in Broncos country right now where there's going to be a lot of changes on the outside, on the fringes of this organization. So you don't want to put too much inside on the football field that's brand new and expect it to go out and win 12 games this year. It's going to take some time to percolate a little bit.
What is your feeling with what is going to all go down and when it's all said and done is going to happen with Lamar Jackson in Baltimore?
It's a great question because Baltimore is, how do I say this, thrifty?
Yes.
Yes.
And they're staring down a $45 million franchise tag in the middle of February, and that's a cap hit. That's something they're going to have to fit into their books immediately the second they offer him that exclusive franchise tag. 30 other teams in the league, I'd say they're definitely going to do it. I'd put Baltimore in a maybe right now with that. And if they do it, it'd be a temporary move, and then they would seek to find a trade partner to get him out the door. That to me is about 51% where I'm leaning with this situation. I do think it's past the point of we're going to pay him $200 million guaranteed and give him what he wants. I do think we're slightly past that point. If it happens, it happens. But I do think the writing's on the wall a little bit here to at least have him out there being shopped at some point.
Mike, how strong of a contender can Jacksonville make themselves considering they have a rookie quarterback, a bunch of young talent on defense, and an owner that does have in-pocket money to spend when it comes down to doing contracts?
Yeah. So let's just say they're the Bengals from last year, except for they've got an owner who's definitely going to pay. You nailed it on the head there, which means they can probably be sustainable, which means they can probably do more than we think on the field right now because they've got a lot of firepower, especially offensively. They're probably a year away defensively. They've got to go and build that thing this offseason in a couple of places, and they're going to spend to do it. But you're right. It's all about the ability to go out and throw things around from the top down. And I have a lot of faith in what Doug Peterson's system is doing for that offense. So I'd put them, top 5 in this AFC now for 3 to 5 years. They're in their window, no doubt about it.
So be worried just a little bit, or just
Yeah, that's part of the reason I'm telling the Tennessee Titans they should start to blow it up a little bit here for 2 years for sure.